All right. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, everybody. You know, if you follow us on Twitter or if you get our alerts right here on YouTube, you saw us say we were going live today. We were going live at 8 o'clock Central Time. It's a new day. It's a new week. It's a new month. We're kicking off February. And we said this live stream was going to be just amazing. We said it was going to be better than ever before. So many new updates, so many new changes. We've got this fantastic setup now for every single live stream we are going to do going forward. And of course, that is courtesy of our great friend, our great editor, the guy that does our thumbnails, that edits our videos, Joshua Pruitt. We cannot thank him enough for the work that he's doing. He's producing this as we speak right now. So, we are so thrilled, guys, to be back. We took about a week off, give or take a week off, after those conference championship games in the NFL to kind of work on this, to get this prepared, and to get some things collected for some new series we're going to have going forward. We're going to be breaking down all of the major, actually I don't even say major, every single coaching change that has transpired at the FBS level over these last few weeks, over these last few months. We're going to break that down for you. We're going to do some conference realignments, kind of from our own vision of what we'd like to see conferences look like. We're going to take a look at our way too early top 25. We're going to do schedule previews. We've got our Super Bowl prediction coming out Wednesday, a Super Bowl recap. We took a week off so we can go 2 months nonstop, and we are so excited to get jumping on that, and we are so excited with what we have right here with our live streams. Again, every Monday night, 8 o'clock Central Time. We're going to run this thing for about an hour 15 every single time, and we can't wait. We can't wait to sit here and talk college football with you guys. It might be the off season, but there's always something to talk about. So, taking a look at what we got here. Too Quick Basketball. What's going on? Love it when you comment. Love it when you're here. Always some great insight. Fallen Hero. What's going on? And Scott Van Kale, my man. Literally a walking, talking Baylor encyclopedia. Scott, so happy to have you here. Rip Dustin Diamond, of course. Obviously, Louisville women's basketball. That was a big-time matchup today in the women's basketball world. I actually watched a little bit of that game. And your birthday's on Valentine's Day. We'll have a special shout-out for you on Valentine's Day, Scott. But that's awesome. Not too long. Luke's Productions. Go Frogs. Big TCU fan over here. And again, guys, we're going to take a look at a lot of things tonight. We like to, tonight, no calls. I will say that. You can look at the bottom here. We've got a lot of stuff down the bottom. When we do call-in shows, we'll have that number scrolling through like on an ESPN ticker, like always. But we will have calls next week, not today. We kind of just wanted to sit down and talk with you guys mostly through chat. But we like to let you guys dictate these live streams. We like to let you guys kind of run the show. You know, answer any questions, any discussion points, and I'll start off the conversation as more people kind of start trickling in here. But we want to let you guys dictate what we talk about here on the Gridiron Expert, especially in these live streams. So, having said that, again, everybody that's here now, everybody that is soon to come, thank you so much for joining us today. Can't wait to get started. And let's start right now with what has happened, I think, down in the SEC. That's where I want to start first. And I'd love to get a lot of your takes on this, specifically with Tennessee. That is going to be our first, I'll spoil it now, our first coaching change video that will come out tomorrow afternoon. We're going to talk about Tennessee, who just hired Josh Heupel away from Central Florida. Now, why did they have to go hire Josh Heupel from Central Florida? It's because they were giving recruits, long story short, giving recruits money in McDonald's bags. I think I'd much rather get money as my Happy Meal toy than anything else. That's what they were doing. They were blatantly cheating, and yet somehow Tennessee continued to struggle. Volunteers, as many of you know, 3-7 this year. 3-7 in the SEC, that all 10-game SEC schedule. It was brutal. And I think when you hear that they cheated and they were paying their players, and the fact they've continued to struggle under the Jeremy Pruitt era, I think that makes that just that much worse. So, you know, Pruitt needed to be fired. Fulmer needed to be gone, because whether they say he did it or not, I wholeheartedly believe that Philip Fulmer knew what was going on within his own program. And Tennessee, that again, as we have said, no hate, no disrespect, but Tennessee, a team that has been irrelevant since about 1998, I believe the last time they won a national title, they're continuing to be a dumpster fire. They're continuing to head in the wrong direction. And you can't help but wonder, is Josh Heupel really going to be the guy to change that? Is Josh Heupel the guy that, a couple of years ago led UCF to a Fiesta Bowl appearance only because he was playing with Scott Frost players, and after that, the last 2 years has continued to go backwards? A guy that has no discipline, had no control over a Central Florida team. They were one of the most penalized teams in the country. They were fighting among themselves. They could not hold a lead. Blown leads against Cincinnati, Memphis, Tulsa. All of those things combined. Is Josh Heupel really the guy that's going to come into the SEC, compete against your Alabama every year, Florida, Georgia? Is he going to be the guy to turn things around? Probably not. Remember, though, Danny White, the athletic director at Tennessee now, replacing Philip Fulmer, he was the former athletic director at Central Florida. So he was kind of in a bit of a, he was between a rock and a hard place when it came to this hire, and went with the guy that he was familiar with. He even said, I didn't want to, not in a bad way, but I didn't want to hire Josh Heupel. I wanted to branch out. I wanted to find someone different. It just wasn't there. Who wanted to go to Tennessee? Nobody. Nobody wanted to go there 2-3 years ago before they hired Jeremy Pruitt. No one wants to go there now. No one wants to deal with this because not only is it a very difficult place to win, a very tough place, they're about to get hit with a bunch of sanctions. In theory, they're going to get hit with a bunch of sanctions. I don't know if I want to go to a place and coach where I might get hit with, less scholarships, might get put on a bowl ban. Not that they were going to make one anyways, but I don't know if I'd want to deal with that. Josh Heupel obviously embraced it. Hopefully he'll do well. I hope he succeeds. But his character and his style of coaching has to change drastically for Tennessee to even remotely begin to contend in the SEC. Nicholas Thompson, what's going on, my man? I love talking to you. We're not going to be able to talk over the phone today, but next week we will. We're going to do it right after the Super Bowl, that Monday night after the Super Bowl, so we'll have stuff to talk about there, talk about your dogs, talk about a lot of big stuff, and I'd love to hear anything you've got on Georgia right now. I don't want to strictly sit here and just talk SEC ball, but if you got anything on that, we'll talk about it. Scott, I think it's a decent hire for Tennessee, but I wouldn't know who else would be a better option. The question is, who will be the staffs for both Central Florida and Tennessee? Great question. It's a really good question. The problem with these coaching hires happening and scandals like this happening so late in the game, Scott, and for anybody really, is at that point, Tennessee, they were put in a rough spot. Coaching changes and coaches being searched for, that usually begins when their season ends, into November, early December. That's usually when you're looking for a coach. This reminds me in a way very similar to what happened last year with the Mel Tucker, Mark D'Antonio debacle with Colorado and Michigan State. I mean, around this time last year, early February, Mel Tucker jumped ship, went to Michigan State after he was very adamant that he was going to stay at Colorado and build something there. Money talks, and Josh Heupel is getting an upgrade. I mean, UCF and the American Athletic, they are on the rise, no doubt about it. No doubt about it, they are on the rise. I genuinely consider them a Power 6 conference, and we can talk on that in a second. But Tennessee, the SEC, the history, the pageantry, the opportunities there, certainly going to be more than UCF and the American Athletic, where they don't stand a chance at a national championship. Not because they're incapable of doing so, but because the College Football Playoff Committee will never put a Group of 5 team in the playoff, even if they rightfully deserve it. And that's another conversation for another time. Of course, it will kind of break down in the future. But, the staff for UCF and Tennessee is going to be very interesting. And that's another thing we'll talk about in our coaching changes videos for the teams that have put together staffs already, such as Steve Sarkisian at Texas, Brian Harsin at Auburn. We'll break down those hires too. Do we think that these are going to be good coordinators, offensive, defensive, good skill positions? Because one thing I look for in coaches, and if I were a coach, especially at a major program in the SEC or anywhere else, I want to bring in guys that are getting the job done 100%. The guy that I believe is the best mind, best option for my offense, for my defense. But at the same time, I want to bring in a guy that knows my program. Now, there's something to be said for bringing in a former legendary quarterback to come be your quarterback coach. A legendary running back, Cadillac Williams for Auburn. He's their running backs coach. I mean, he's there. He's a legend at Auburn, one of the best to ever do it. It's only right. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. He knows the culture at Auburn. He knows what it takes to win in the SEC. It's a brilliant hire. It's a brilliant place to be. So, yeah, I want a guy that's going to know what he's doing, but I want a guy that's going to understand my program, too. I want a guy that's going to understand what it takes to win and who has done this stuff before. Because culture is everything. And I think for those of you that might watch this later, like my man Mitch, big Iowa State fan. And again, Mitch, I hope your commentating is going well tonight, the basketball game. But 5-star culture at Iowa State over 5-star talent. Coaching goes a long way. Remember, Iowa State said that shortly after they defeated Texas down in Austin. And I think I fully agree with it. I've always said, you can get a 5-star player right out of high school. And, that's great. 5-star quarterback, 5-star wide receiver. But if you don't have the coaches to, breed that talent, to improve on that talent, to let them build on their skill, then what are you doing? The culture goes a long way. The culture was something that was dwindling at Central Florida, which makes me concerned of what the culture could be like at Tennessee going forward for Josh Heupel. But yes, long story short, I kind of went on a tangent there, but that was kind of my little run for what Scott was saying there. Will Burrow, is my editor Joshua Pruitt related to Jeremy Pruitt? Josh pops in, says yes, absolutely, and yes, of course he is. Actually, I believe second cousin twice removed. Scott, not really similar, but Baylor had to deal with a new coach when Baylor scapegoated Art Briles in May, so I know how it feels for Tennessee. Yeah, Scott, I was a big, I still am. I love Baylor. I genuinely love Baylor. I have no reason to, no ties to Baylor at all, but ever since I was a little kid, 8 years old, Baylor has been one of my top teams. And they brought in Jim Grobe, if I'm not mistaken, when they scapegoated Art Briles, as you said. Brought in Jim Grobe right after that. Started off the season 6-0, and I think, lost their final 6 games after that. I mean, that was a year in 2015, 2016, Scott, where Baylor absolutely, I think if they had kept Art Briles, could have contended for a national championship, could have contended for a spot in the college football playoff, and everything just kind of fell apart going forward. So, yeah, May way worse than February. May way worse than January. I mean, yeah, by that point, Baylor was struggling. You weren't going to get a quality coach to come in there. You just had to find a guy to fill the void. Grobe was never going to be the guy to stay there. He has had ties to the school. He had prior head coaching experience, and that was that. Comic Dude, how is it going? My man, it's been a while since we've seen you, but I'm glad to have you here. Hope everything is going well up at Rutgers. Their basketball teams disappoint me a little bit. It's hard to believe. Like about a month ago, they were like the 14th ranked team in the country. But I know they got that win over Northwestern the other day, so I hope they keep building on that. Hope they can make it to the Big Dance, a place they should have been last year. So good to see you, though. Everyone thought no coach was getting fired this year. Still business as usual, Yeah, I think a lot of people, even some coaches, thought they had a free pass because it's COVID. Players get sick, the coach gets sick, schedules are out of whack. So we go undefeated, we go winless. It doesn't matter. It's like a free pass, get out of jail free card, And I certainly think that wasn't the case. There were some coaches I think coming into this season, even with COVID, they were on the hot seat and they deserved to be on the hot seat. COVID helped them out maybe in some cases, and that gave them a better argument. Gave them excuses, but at the end of the day, you're still playing football. It's one thing to have, your star quarterback out for the whole year because of COVID or whatever. One thing to have one guy out for a game. And I look specifically at Jim Harbaugh, a guy that I cannot believe still has a job right now. Again, nothing against Michigan, nothing against him. But how can a man that was, for many people, on the hot seat coming into this season anyways, was on the hot seat coming into this year, goes, 2-4, 2-6, how many games Michigan played, and still has a job. Signed him to an extension. And they were lucky they didn't play Ohio State because they would have got murdered. I mean, it would have been, 70-14. I mean, it would have been bad. So, I don't know what Michigan sees in him. I don't know if they genuinely think that he can turn it around or if they just did it because they knew they weren't going to get anybody better in this offseason. You can kind of tell who was going to be on the market and who wasn't. But signing him to an extension which then in turn creates a buyout. If Michigan wants to get rid of him as soon as this upcoming season, now they're paying a lot more money than they need to. So that's obviously it's poor management, really, by the athletic department. I think of Gus Malzahn in Auburn and what they did. Inked him to a 7-year, $49 million contract. 3 years later, you fire him. Horrible decision to ink him that long of a contract, that lengthy of a contract, that huge of a contract, and now you're paying over $20 million in buyout. What are you doing? It's horrible business management. Horrible business management. Eddie Rose, good to see you. Big Missouri fan. When am I going to do predictions for teams next season? Eddie, and for everybody, we always do predictions, full-fledged hour predictions in June. That's when they're going to start. Mid to late June. That way, and we're cranking out, 2, sometimes 3 videos a day, teams a day, predictions. It's my favorite time of the year. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, but man, it's a lot of fun and provides some great discussion. So that's going to start in June. Again, like we mentioned at the beginning of the stream, we've got a lot of content lined up for these next few months. We've got the Super Bowl, we've got coaching changes, conference realignments, just hypotheticals, of course. Way too early top 25 that'll come out in a few months. We're going to have schedule previews for some of the top teams. So a lot of stuff that's going to carry us through until summer. It'll be here before we know it. And then prediction season, then boom. We're on the 2021 season. One that hopefully will be normal. One that hopefully will contain some high-quality non-conference games. We can talk on that later. And that's even going to be a whole video topic someday. Georgia, Clemson, Bama, Miami. A couple other games down the stretch. Week 2, Week 3. Arkansas, Texas. Penn State, Auburn. I believe Ohio State and Oregon are still supposed to play. So a lot of big games coming our way that hopefully we will get to see in action. Something that we should have had this last year, but couldn't, of course, due to COVID. So long story short, Eddie, June. Zane Reese, good to have you here. Dennis Murtick, good to have you here. I'm going to start with Zane. Glad he's gone. Thoughts on the UCF players campaigning for Jeff Lebby? That's what you got to love. Players searching for their next head coach. I love it, Zane. I'm with you 100%. And the funny thing about Josh Heupel, and as you mentioned, you're a fan. You're glad he's gone. There's a problem when the players seem to be happy that their coach is gone. Heupel, I mentioned earlier, his character is something that concerns me. His character is something that concerns me. He left. He took the Tennessee job, left without telling his players. I know that whole process happened very fast. It's a whirlwind of events, but you can't text, you can't call. A lot of these players voicing their opinions on that on Twitter and Instagram, stuff like that. So, speaking of which, go drop us a follow on Twitter and Instagram. We got our tags pulled up there. But, that's a problem. And that's something that Danny White should have seen a long time ago. Very classless act, I think, on Josh Heupel's part. Campaigning for Jeff Lebby, who's a brilliant offensive mind. I think if you're going to go to UCF, you've got to have the offense because they've got that offensive talent there. Dylan Gabriel sticks around. They get a coach that Dylan Gabriel likes. I think he is. Gabriel seems like a loyal guy. This is an offense that could really take off and still be one of the best in the American, still one of the best in the country. So I love that they're campaigning for their new head coach already because it shows loyalty to the program and shows they still have that drive. Sometimes it takes a special type of player to do that, guys. But when you go through a scenario like this, there's a lot of players out there that get their heads hung down low. They bring in a new coach. They don't like him. They don't like his style. He's not as lenient as the last guy. Makes them work too hard, whatever it is. And they quit. They face the slightest bit of adversity and they quit. They transfer out. They stop playing. They complain about it. So I love it. I love their campaigning. I love that they're actively searching. And I hope that the active Central Florida administration listens to them. Because the guys sitting up in their ivory castle, drinking, eating the free food, sitting in the AC or sitting in the heat, regardless of the game, staying dry, they're not the ones playing for these head coaches. It's the players. All right? Yes, you need to hire a guy that has some experience. Yes, you're going to hire a guy that you hope and believe will succeed. But at the end of the day, the guys that are dressed like me, sitting up there, managing the finances and getting all the money, they're not playing for these coaches. Your players are. Your student athletes are. Maybe you should listen to them a little bit. And I hope that they do. Dennis, who is winning the Mountain West? Too early to tell, but a lot of legitimate contenders. I mean, Boise's always a perennial contender. Air Force is going to be very tough per usual. I don't know if San Jose State can pull it off again. You know, they lose a lot of talent and laid an egg, a complete dud in their bowl game against Ball State. But San Jose State, I don't think it's going to completely just tank like they did or like they have for about the past decade or so. So a lot of quality teams that could hang in there. I'm going to have to go, honestly, right now. Nevada, of course, is a contender. Boise State for now. Probably the team that's most set up for success outside, of course, of the coaching change. That's the only thing that I think Boise State has a disadvantage with right now. The quarterback situation looks good. Wide receiver situation looks solid. So I want to do more research on that later on. Obviously, we'll have the predictions for that later on, but I'm going to go Boise for an early thought. Comment dude, very confident in the Rutgers basketball administration, basketball staff, and I wholeheartedly agree. I hope he can get him back on track and win a couple games in that Big Ten tournament and get them back to the big dance. Because, I mean, look, I know it's a different year, but I almost feel like teams like Rutgers and teams like, you know, your teams that are 15, 16 seeds that more than likely weren't going to win a game in the tournament anyways, I feel like they almost deserve like that automatic berth now. I mean, they didn't get to play. If they had already clinched their spot to the NCAA tournament, I feel like they should have gotten their chance, you know, like now, this year. Like, hey, we're kind of making up for it. I mean, I know you can't do that because it would be unfair to some other teams, but I feel for those guys. I feel for those seniors that work their butts off all year long. Then March hits, right when the peak time COVID hits, we shut everything down, and those guys don't get their opportunities. Yeah, they're probably going to lose your 15, 16 seeds, but that's still an experience of a lifetime and a very, very big deal. That's what makes Selection Sunday and the NCAA tournament so special, because it's special for those smaller schools, and when they win, because they do on occasion, it makes it just that much more special. What makes March Madness so great. So, my take on that, but probably not going to happen. Talon Sharp, what are my thoughts on Oklahoma State on the upcoming year after the upsetting year they just had on offense? Well, upsetting year they just had on offense, and upsetting year they had on offense, and now they're going to lose a lot of their offensive production, a good amount of it at least. So the Big 12 was quite the anomaly, I think, going into 2020. We knew that going into it. We expected Oklahoma to be very good. They struggled at first, bounced back, ended up winning the conference. We expected Iowa State to be good. People thought we were crazy that when we said Iowa State would go 8-2 and win the Big 12, and they went 8-2 and were a few plays away from winning the Big 12, made the championship game. We knew Texas would be a contender. We knew TCU might be able to contend. I mean, the Big 12, I remember last year saying from top to bottom, from in the preseason, saying Oklahoma's the best to Kansas being the worst. Any team had a chance to pull off a handful of upsets and greatly shape how that conference was going to be formed. And that's exactly what happened. Oklahoma State, this upcoming year, again, they were a team that was expected to be a playoff dark horse, was expected to contend for a Big 12 title. And after they lost to Texas, after they lost that overtime heartbreaker to Texas, their season was derailed. I think I don't want to say they gave up, but it was such a heartbreaking defeat, controversial defeat for some. I think they knew, hey, we're not making the college football playoff. We had to go undefeated for that to happen, and it's just not going to happen. So, and I think they just kind of gave up. Their main goal was gone, and they lost all morale. I mean, you look at the way they played, blown out against Oklahoma, barely escaped Kansas State. All the way down the stretch, they struggled. Lost to TCU, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, going into this year, quarterback transformation is going to be key. If I'm not mistaken, Spencer Sanders is still going to be there. So that's going to be huge enough as it is. He played very well in the bowl game, I thought, against Miami. That was a great way to end. Great way to end their season with that bowl win against Miami. And he had a heck of a game. For a guy that was sketchy on playing anyways, played very well. I know Chuba Hubbard should be gone. Tylan Wallace is going to be gone. Should be one of the top few wide receivers taken in the NFL draft. All of those things combined, upsetting year on offense, and now they're going to have to rebuild a lot on offense. So I'm expecting talent. I'm going to tell you it's not going to be a great year for Oklahoma State. They'll be a top 25 team. They'll be in and out of the top 25, but they are not going to be your playoff contender, your Big 12 title contender. I'd be shocked if they could do that. I mean, Gundy's a great offensive mind. If anybody can surprise us with that, it's him. Sanders continuing to develop as a quarterback, a young quarterback, might be able to do enough across the board to help him out. And keep in mind, Oklahoma State, outside of Hubbard, who didn't play much of a role this year compared to 2019, they've got a decent backfield, so it might not be as bad as you think. But I'm not banking on like a 10-2, maybe not even a 9-3 type season for Oklahoma State. But again, we'll really dive deeper into that come June. Again, guys, thank you all so much for being here. We're going to keep going through the chat. Hitting on as many questions and comments that you guys have. Again, all 20 of you guys, hit that like button. Really, that helps our analytics more than you know. I know it sounds crazy, but one click of the thumbs up button, boom, helps us big time. And again, we are so happy to have over 21 of you guys now on our live chat. Again, every Monday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And love this setup. But that's just me. Kicking Nerd, what are my thoughts on South Carolina hiring Shane Beamer going into 2021? That's something we will certainly address in our coaching changes series. Again, that's going to start tomorrow with Tennessee. Probably lasts about 2 weeks or so. We'll touch on Shane Beamer in South Carolina. But I was surprised that's who they went with, if that makes sense. I was almost sold that Billy Napier from Louisiana was going to go to South Carolina. I felt very confident that's where he was going to go. I mean, this was a guy that for the last 2 years has done phenomenal work with Louisiana down the Sun Belt. The guy that I really thought would take off and try to seize that opportunity at the next level. Sun Belt to SEC is a huge jump. I thought he'd be the man to do it, and he didn't. So when I hear Shane Beamer, kind of an assistant over at Oklahoma, who obviously ties to the great Frank Beamer, I mean, that's fantastic. But I'm skeptical, to say the least. South Carolina, like Tennessee, is in a very, very bad state right now. Muschamp didn't do anything bad. He wasn't winning. He didn't do anything bad to run that program into the ground. But when the head ball coach leaves, Steve Spurrier, you were going to see a significant drop-off, and that's exactly what happened. And he was just never able to fill those shoes. I mean, it's hard to believe that South Carolina was a 10, 11-win team consistently. 1 point number 3 in the country under Steve Spurrier. So I am skeptical on Shane Beamer, but I do think with the experience that he's had at Oklahoma, a team that has a very rich history of winning, has a rich history of winning lately under Lincoln Riley. They've won now 6, 7 straight Big 12 titles. They went to the playoff, 3 years in a row. Never won any, but still getting there, it's a big deal. He's on the staff for that, and that helps out. Not for all those years, but he's been on that staff, has learned under a great coach in Lincoln Riley, who at times many thought might head off to the NFL. So all those experiences can go a long way. I've heard he's a pretty solid recruiter too, and hopefully he can land some big recruits and start to turn South Carolina around, because until then, the SEC East is a 2-team race, Georgia and Florida. Say what you want. Missouri might contend. Kentucky might bounce back. They're not. Not yet. Missouri surprised a lot of people in 2020. Eli Drinkwitz did a great job, but they're not to the point of challenging Georgia and Florida for that division crown yet. We know Vanderbilt's not going to do it. Another coaching change in Clark Lee that we'll talk about later. Vanderbilt's not going to do it. Kentucky's not going to do it. South Carolina's not going to do it. Tennessee right now, sure as heck, isn't going to do it. It's Florida, Georgia. That game in Jacksonville will determine who wins that division. And it's unfortunate that we don't have enough parity in the East right now. But hopefully with Beamer coming into South Carolina, Heupel and Tennessee, we've got 3 new coaches in the SEC East, guys. And I genuinely hope that each of them succeeds and makes that conference very competitive, and that division very competitive, because right now, the West still, it has been and still is the much more competitive side of the SEC. Even when teams struggle in the West, they are better than most of the teams in the East. You might disagree with that, but Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, Ole Miss lighting it up offensively with Lane Kiffin. Mississippi State, a team now, with Mike Leach. Yeah, they struggled towards the end, didn't have a great year. Won their bowl game against a solid Tulsa team, though. And then Arkansas now. They've been the dumpster fire of the SEC, maybe worse than Vanderbilt for the last few years. Sam Pittman comes in, they go 3-7, beat Tennessee, beat Mississippi State, had a couple other, beat Ole Miss, who a lot of people think is going to light it up in 2021. They very well could be a bowl team now. So the West, way more competitive than the East, and until those lower tier teams in the East can start to improve, it's Florida and Georgia's to lose. And sometimes that's cool and fun to watch. Sometimes it's really disappointing. Zane Reese, Luke Fickell's waiting on that Michigan job. I wholeheartedly agree. That's more of the reason I'm surprised Michigan didn't let Harbaugh go. But the one thing I will say, if I'm an athletic director at any point in time and I plan on firing my head coach, I better have and I will have a guy waiting in the wings. If I'm Michigan and I plan on firing Jim Harbaugh, I think I'm going to call up Luke Fickell first and say, hey, are you interested? And he goes, yeah, I'm interested. I'm like, all right, Harbaugh, you're out. Don't do anything. Don't pull any rash decisions without knowing. Don't make any rash decisions without having a plan in place. Too many coaches, too many schools and athletic directors do that, and it puts their school in a very bad position. So I do agree, Zane. Fickell is a fantastic coach. What he's done with Cincinnati is truly unbelievable. A team that I think got snubbed big time this year. Not necessarily for the playoff, but over the course of the entire season with their rankings, they were very disrespected. And he's long overdue for a Power 5 coaching job. Kicking Nerd, I miss being on this live chat. I'm glad you missed it. You're not going to miss it much anymore. Again, every Monday, 8 p.m. Central Time, right here, we're going to be talking college football. Some days we'll have calls. Some days we won't, like today. Regardless, we're going to be talking with you. We want to hear from you, and we're so pumped to be doing that and doing it consistently. It's something we've struggled with, and that's me, obviously, but we're going to fix that now. We're going to be more consistent. We're going to get things under control. Every Monday, 8 p.m. Central Time. You're not going to miss it for very long. Scott Van Kale, reminding everybody, hit that like video or hit the like button on the video. All right, and we're still kind of scrolling through the chat, guys. I'm getting some more conversation here, and I love it. And again, guys, we'll probably run this thing for about an hour. Like we said, we're only halfway through. We still got plenty of time. Let's see. Will, do I think Steve Sarkisian is going to make Texas better? Absolutely. I think he was one of the top hires of this entire offseason. And, we're starting that coaching changes series coming up. Tennessee's tomorrow, as we mentioned. We're going to have a Super Bowl prediction on Wednesday. Then we'll resume the coaching changes. Texas will be very early on in that. We'll tell you everything we think about Steve Sarkisian, but I think he's going to turn them around. Not to even say Texas was bad. I wouldn't even say Texas was ever bad. That they've just been disappointing. And I think he's going to make sure that I think Steve Sarkisian is going to bring Texas back. That's a bold statement, but I think Steve Sarkisian will bring Texas back. And I know that is something that you have been longing to hear. Scott Bankale, there have been several people on Sikkim 365 Radio that's talked so positive about Eric Mateos as the new offensive line coach at Baylor ever since he's been hired. You and I, Scott, have talked a little bit about that on Instagram, DM on Instagram, and both of us have agreed that it was a fantastic hire. And I hope it pans out because the offensive line at times here for Baylor, as you certainly know firsthand, has been very shaky. Charlie Brewer took beatings left and right. Maybe part of the reason that he transferred. I hate it for him off to Utah now, but he's a guy that I really think could turn things around on Dave Aranda's staff and hopefully will improve some things for the Bears, a team that I think could very well go bowling in 2021. Quarterback, of course, is going to be the major storyline there down in Waco. All right, let's see what else we've got here. NCAA shorts, let's go Mountaineers. Connor, will the Bearcats repeat in the American? Yeah, I think Cincinnati's the team to beat in the American until proven otherwise. I think Desmond Ridder, with him coming back, that was huge. That was huge. And I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. So you look at Cincinnati, the way they played against Georgia in that Peach Bowl, it was an unbelievable performance. I mean, it took a 50-plus yard field goal in the final seconds for Georgia to knock off Cincinnati. Not a dog on Georgia. Cincinnati's a dang good football team, but that shows you how good Cincinnati was. A lot of those players, a couple players especially, stayed, watched that trophy celebration. They felt disrespected. And I think a lot of these guys are going to come back. Cincinnati's got some great opportunities this year, guys. They play Notre Dame. They play Indiana. So, yes, right now, they're my favorite to win the American. And let me tell you, if they go undefeated, if Cincinnati goes undefeated with a win against Notre Dame, with a win against Indiana, runs the table on the American, which is already tough enough as it is, they will make the college football playoff. If they don't, I genuinely think there will be riots in the street, whether you're a Cincinnati fan or not. I don't know how you could do that. I don't know how, if you're a college football playoff committee member, if Cincinnati runs the table with wins against again, Notre Dame, who could be a top 10 team, Indiana, who could be a top 10 team, and then the American, which is tough enough as it is with Central Florida, Memphis, Tulsa. I mean, the American's growing, guys. Even your lower tier teams like East Carolina, my man Destry could tell you all about that. East Carolina on their way up. Tulsa, hopefully they continue their success. Philip Montgomery was on the hot seat, crushed all those doubts after this amazing year where they made the American championship game. So East Carolina, Houston, obviously, I think it's going to get there under Dana Holgorsen. Tulane, not too bad either. So the American, kind of similar to the Big 12, like we talked about earlier, from top to bottom, they're tough. They're tough. And those are quality wins, not just for the teams within their conference, but for the teams that scheduled them out of conference. But yeah, Cincinnati's my team to repeat in the American, and they're a playoff dark horse, legitimately this time, if they go undefeated. And I would even say 11-1. I think they would have a strong case, assuming, the only one of those losses is to Indiana or Notre Dame. Barry Thornton, good morning from a dog in China. China, are you kidding me? I think we have guys all across the country. I know we've had a guy from Germany once, but China. Wow. So Barry, hey, thank you. I don't know what time it is over there. But if this is how you're starting your morning over in China, or spending part of your morning over in China, thank you. Thank you. I love it. And we'll have to talk more about that sometime, Barry. Genuinely. 10:38 a.m. We got Josh has looked it up for us. So it's 10:38 a.m. over in China. So not too early, but early for me, I'd say. But Barry, thank you so much. And safe travels or whatever you're doing in China. Zane, talking to Connor about the American Athletic. Fickle going as a head coach. Cincinnati's a top 25 national program. Top 3 American Athletic Conference team. Johnny Bays, yo, go Irish. Well, I know we're going to talk a lot about Notre Dame in the following weeks, and certainly a lot over this offseason, how they're going to deal with the replacement of Ian Book, and if they can, return to the college football playoff back as an independent after their 1-year stay in the ACC. Turnage Bros channel, when's the draft? Do you know? The NFL draft is late April. April 26th, 27th, somewhere around there. It's always the last week of April, late 20s into April. So we'll have some draft coverage for sure. We'll do a little bit of a mini mock draft. We'll break down some of the top prospects for each position, at least the big ones. Quarterback's huge. We know Trevor Lawrence should be the first taken off the board, going to Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars. An interesting hire in and of itself. We'll talk more on that in the future. But Trevor Lawrence is there. Then after that, who goes? Does Zach Wilson of BYU jump Justin Fields in Ohio State? Where does Trey Lance go? Everybody's talking about these FBS quarterbacks, how good they are, and they are. We're forgetting about Trey Lance, who had one game in 2020, that one showcase game against Central Arkansas, where he put on a pretty good performance. Bison got the win. Where does he go? Is Trey Lance a first-round pick? I don't think he's a top 10 pick, but is he a first-round pick? Or does Lance fall to second round, third round? Because let me tell you, whoever gets him is getting a steal. This guy is extremely talented. Let's keep in mind he was a freshman, didn't throw a single interception, led the Bison to an undefeated record and won the national championship at the FCS level. Say what you want. FCS isn't as good as the FBS. You're wrong. Some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL today in recent history have come from the FCS. You look at Tony Romo. Tony Romo was a guy who went to Eastern Illinois, same as Jimmy Garoppolo, who might be finding himself back in New England here relatively soon. A lot of quarterback changes within the NFL coming, which is greatly going to shape the way this draft pans out. Both those guys went to Eastern Illinois. We know that Carson Wentz, I love him or hate him. Most people hate him because of how poorly he's played with the Eagles, and injuries, of course, haven't helped. He went to North Dakota State. Easton Stick is on the Chargers roster. He went to North Dakota State. And that's just a handful of guys. Joe Flacco, I believe, went to Delaware. He was a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP with the Baltimore Ravens. So FCS quarterbacks can play, guys. I don't think it matters what level you are. If you've got the heart and the talent for it, these NFL scouts, they're going to find you. They're going to give you your chance, and you've got to go out and make the most of it. And a lot of times, they do. So the draft is coming up, and this is one of the few drafts in a while that I've really, really been looking forward to seeing. One where after Trevor Lawrence gets picked, after the first two picks, which I do think will be Lawrence and Fields, it's fair game. No one knows what's going to happen. Lots of trades, and not just because of what's happening with the players that are prospects, but what's happening with the quarterbacks that are already in the league. We just saw Matt Stafford go out to L.A. We just saw Jared Goff go off to Detroit, so they swapped quarterbacks. The Patriots desperately need a quarterback. The Saints are going to need one now that Drew Brees is more than likely retiring. Will Tom Brady retire if he wins the Super Bowl on Sunday? That's obviously something that could be an issue. And the Bucs would need somebody right now. So a lot of teams are going to be trading quarterbacks. They're going to be looking for drafting quarterbacks. It's going to be a very, very fun offseason. Very, very fun next few months. That was a long, long answer for when's the draft. I started talking about the actual draft. Talon Sharp, rebuilding for sure. Always hope, however. Always hope. Look, this is college football, man. I've been covering it for so long, as many of you guys have too. And you go into a season, you go, this team's not going to be worth anything. Or, yeah, this is probably going to be a rebuilding year for us. And then they skyrocket and they win 9, 10 games. They contend for a conference title. Hell, they might even contend for a national championship. Who knows? I mean, that's what makes college football so great. I mean, you've got your perennial contenders. We know going into this year, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, guys like that, they're going to contend. You got these other guys that are right on the outside looking in, or maybe your team is, you're like, hey, man, I just hope we make a bowl game. 6-6 would be great. And they shock you. They surprise you. That's what makes it so great and so unpredictable. A lot of people are getting tired because they don't think there's enough, parity in college football. They don't think there's enough separation because it's always those same elite teams that are making the Final Four. That's part of the reason I'm all for playoff expansion. But with the guys outside of that, it's a dogfight. It's all over the place. And that's part of the reason I love this game so much. John Hopkins, what's going on? I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to see you, Grayson. You were the first guy to comment today, like within 5 minutes. I say, hey, 2 o'clock. I said, we're going live at 8 o'clock. And Grayson goes, I'm not going to miss it. I was like, I like that answer. So, Grayson, what's good? Glad to see you. I'm going to talk on your basketball questions here in a second. Will Burrow, what do I think of Blackman transferring to Arkansas State at the quarterback position? Obviously, a void that's being filled there for Arkansas State. In a way, I believe it was Logan Bonner that transferred to Utah State. He followed Blake Anderson out to Utah State, which means right now for Butch Jones and the Red Bulls, it's Lane Hatcher's team, but Blackman can contend for that spot. Got plenty of experience, plenty of talent. Again, maybe you didn't see it in the past, but he's transferring to a lower level Sun Belt competition. I wouldn't even say it's that low anymore. I used to view it as one of the weaker conferences, but A-State genuinely contends. Coastal Carolina's on the rise, as we've seen. I don't think they're going to fall off very much. Louisiana looking good. App State always good. Georgia Southern tough to stop. The Sun Belt's tougher than people give it credit for. They are no pushover. So this is going to be a quarterback battle that people in Jonesboro are going to want to watch for the next few months and what Butch Jones decides to do, because he has no loyalty to Lane Hatcher. Does he know the system? Yes. Has he earned it? I think he has. But again, any sport, any position, your job's never secure. Never, ever secure. Tyler Zaremba, after extending Harbaugh's contract and the team's recent performances, would you consider Michigan's spot in the Big Three of the East to be open? What about Penn State? That's a fantastic question. Tyler, that's a fantastic question. Yes, I don't think that Michigan is part of the Big Three in the Big Ten East anymore. Ohio State's the king. The problem is, Tyler, and I get where you're coming from, who else is there in the East to fill that void? Indiana, for me right now, would be that guy, I think. Right now, Indiana's a team that could very well be a top 10 team. They host Ohio State this year, and we saw how close they played them in Columbus this last year. So Michael Penix coming back, hopefully fully healthy. Indiana going to return a lot of production. I mean, Indiana, guys, I don't know if you know this, they were ahead of schedule. We knew they were going to be good in 2020. They weren't supposed to be this good. 2021 was the year that everybody in Bloomington was talking about. So that's what makes Indiana even scarier than what they were this last year. In that game against Ohio State at Indiana, I hope we have fans in the stands for that game. I hope that we can have sold-out stadiums again by that point, because that is going to be rocking, maybe one of the best atmospheres in Indiana football history, as long as they live up to their hype. So, Tyler, I do think there's spots open. I think Ohio State's still the king till proven otherwise. Indiana, for now, has filled that void. And now it's a matter of, does Penn State bounce back from their disappointing year, or does Michigan bounce back from their disappointing year? And Tyler, I might even say that the winner of the Penn State-Michigan game in 2021 claims that last spot in the Big Three of the Big Ten East, because I don't think Michigan State's there quite yet. I know a lot of people could argue that. Mel Tucker, his team showed flashes of brilliance. They beat Michigan, beat Northwestern. They were number 8 in the country. Had to think for a minute. There weren't many highlights, but they're still getting there. They're going to be borderline bowl eligible here, but I think the winner of Penn State-Michigan gets that last spot. And right now I'm leaning towards Penn State. I'm leaning towards Penn State. A lot of people seem to think that the Nittany Lions are going to bounce back in a big way from what was a horrible, horrible 2020 season. Again, a season where, similar to Oklahoma State, one game derailed their year. The season opener, when they lost to Indiana in overtime the way they did, it derailed their season. I don't think they overlooked Indiana, but we all knew that Ohio State was the week after. And they thought, all right, top 10 matchup in Happy Valley. This is going to decide the East. The playoff hopes are determined here against the Buckeyes. Well, then they lose to Indiana, and the game loses all its luster. So, I think Penn State does bounce back. They're just going to have to get off to a little bit of a better start. And if they struggle early, one loss will not necessarily keep you out of the college football playoff. Depends on who it's to. One loss doesn't necessarily do that. When you lose, you cannot put your head down and give up, as I've seen so many teams do over the last few years. One loss does not derail your entire season, especially if that loss is early in the year. So, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana for me right now, but the winner of the Michigan-Penn State game gets that last spot. Long story short. All right, we are working our way through. I'm catching up. I'm catching up here. Grayson, what do I think about Georgia stacking 5-star quarterbacks? Do you think we're going to have another Justin Fields and Jake Fromm situation? I will say this, Grayson. Kirby Smart does what he's not a guy I think deals with change very well. I think he's scared to pull the trigger and to take a risk. Jake Fromm took over for Jacob Eason in that season opener a few years ago when Jacob Eason went down for an injury. Fromm played well. He wasn't fantastic, but he was good enough. And I think Kirby Smart was like, all right, we're in the SEC. I mean, every game matters here. And we obviously have a team that can contend for a national title. They went to the national title that year. Why am I going to switch something up when Fromm's doing a decent enough job? You know what I'm saying? And for a while, Georgia has never really been a pass-happy team. I mean, under Mark Richt, they had a very great running back trio at times. You had Sony Michel, you had Nick Chubb, and you had, DeAndre Swift recently just came through Georgia with Kirby Smart. So you had guys like that. Todd Gurley, of course, a big one. All fantastic. All of them fantastic for Georgia. So they were more of a run team. And they're trying to still implement that. Bully you up front and pound the rock. JT Daniels is changing that. And so, no, while they're racking up a bunch of 5-star quarterbacks, I don't think that you're going to see another Jake Fromm, Justin Fields situation, because I don't think Kirby's going to make that wrong decision again. He messed up not putting Justin Fields in and giving him his shot. Justin Fields is light years better over Jake Fromm. We know that. Right now, it's JT Daniels' job, and that's not going to change. I think had JT Daniels played earlier, had Kirby pulled a trigger, taken a risk earlier in the year, instead of riding Stetson Bennett, maybe Georgia's season's a little bit different. Maybe they're not in the Peach Bowl. Maybe they're playing for an SEC title, contending for a playoff spot. But it's JT Daniels' job to lose. Once Daniels is gone, that's where the quarterback controversy comes in. That's where the battles come in. But there is something to be said for too many 5-stars. One or two of them will transfer out within the next year or two, mark my words. But they know that. They're too good. I'm coming to Georgia. I want to play. If I don't win, I'm going to go somewhere that will use my talents. Nothing personal. You just weren't good enough to win the job in Athens. Grayson, Baylor or Gonzaga? Right now, Baylor. Gonzaga's a fantastic team. Gonzaga always scares me, though, in the NCAA tournament because of their weak strength of schedule. They usually play some elite teams early on in the year in those preseason tournaments. Those are awesome. It's great. But then they play 20-something straight games against their West Coast teams. Usually the toughest team they face is BYU or St. Mary's. And, they're no Baylor. They're no Iowa. They're no Texas. Houston even. Watch out for Houston when you're picking your brackets this year. So I'm going to go Baylor on that one. My man B. Kelly, thoughts on the Wave. We talked about them earlier in the American. Talked about them earlier. They're a team that's on the rise. Willie Fritz has done a fantastic job with Tulane this year. Their win I think it was Nevada that dominated Tulane in the Idaho Potato Bowl. That was impressive. I didn't really see that one coming. I thought it'd be a lot closer than that. So, riding a lot of momentum, if I'm right on that, riding a lot of momentum into 2021, they've got a solid quarterback. And if they're running backs, I think Dauphine, if he comes back from injury at 100%, they're a team that could very well win 6 to 7 games, maybe even 8 games in the American. Let me tell you, in a conference like that, that's pretty dang good. This is a Tulane team that for years was struggling to make bowl games. And I think Fritz has made the expectations clear down in New Orleans. Like, hey, this is the expectation now. We might not win the American over teams like Cincinnati, Memphis, UCF, guys like that, but we have the talent to get to 6 wins every year. At least 6 wins. I think that's the expectations now for the Green Wave, and I do think they can do that in 2021. Hunter5657. Wow, your stream has turned into a great show. Thank you, Hunter. I really appreciate that. Again, we mentioned earlier our man Josh Pruitt doing a fantastic job creating this entire setup. Again, something we're going to do every Monday night, 8 p.m. Central Time. So if you can't make it tonight, can't stay long tonight, don't worry. We're going to be right back here next week, taking your calls, taking your questions. But we're thrilled with the setup, and can't wait to see where it continues to go. This is like stage 1, man. We're constantly building. But I appreciate you, Hunter. Comic Dude, what's my favorite sports meme and why? That's a good question, too. I don't even know if I've got a good sports meme. I just like watching sports bloopers. I like seeing guys mess up. That sounds wrong, but I like seeing guys. Like I saw a video today, James Harden got frustrated. He slammed the ball down. It popped him back up on the face. I don't know if it was Bradley Beal or whoever, but he made this weird face at him. Like, my God, what's wrong with this man? So that was good. The goat and the baby goat with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes about to square off. Those have been really good. But I tell you what, the great sports meme, or not sports, the great memes I've been watching lately are just the Bernie memes. I tell you what, not that I'm going to get political. We're not going to dive into that as Eli would like to, but the Bernie memes have been killing me. They've been putting them in Star Wars. They've been putting them in sports. And a lot of the basketball games, if you've been watching college basketball, they've got those big cutouts of people in the stands, and Bernie's been everywhere. So, yeah, I'm all over that. BJ Lover, thoughts of Arik Gilbert. I think, Arik wanted out of LSU for whatever reason, cited that maybe he wanted to be closer to home. The rumor was, okay, you want to be closer to home, you're going to go to Georgia. He didn't. He went to Florida. And I think Florida they had a need there. Kyle Pitts is going to be a top 20 pick in the NFL draft. They need another elite tight end. Do I think Gilbert can replicate that? No. Not early on, at least. But he's a 5-star tight end, great size, great hands, great talent, will fit Dan Mullen's offense perfectly. And I think, in a way, I don't know if he didn't want to go play for Kirby. I don't know if it was because Georgia had too much talent across the board there, where he thought, yeah, I'm 5-star, but they've got other 5 stars too. I know I've got a spot down in Florida. I don't know what it was. But the whole situation was weird. That after 1 year, he's leaving Baton Rouge after, the bowl ban and the disappointing 5-5 season. I do think LSU bounces back in 2021 for what it's worth, but I will be very excited to see him in Florida's offense if they can find a capable quarterback to get him the ball. Emory Jones, the guy down in Gainesville? Is he? I don't know. He's no Kyle Trask. Hunter, thoughts on Coastal Carolina? They will continue their success in the Sun Belt. As long as Jamie Chadwell is there, and within the next 2-3 years, he will bolt for a Power 5 job. Mark my words, very similar to Billy Napier. But as long as he's there, they will succeed. Grayson McCall did everything he did this year as a freshman. Imagine what he's going to do in year 2 as a starter. Coastal Carolina returns a lot of people this year. They're going to be hungry to avenge their season-ending loss to Liberty. They very well could be the Sun Belt Conference favorite going into 2021. So I'm not saying they're going to run the table and go undefeated again. I think that, and that wasn't a fluke, but that's extremely difficult to do. Don't think they're going to run the table and go undefeated, but they very well could win the conference and find themselves in a very solid bowl game. So as long as Chadwell and McCall are together, they're going to be just fine. John Sarian, how many weird statements will Mullen make in 2021? I'm taking the over on 3, mostly because they will probably not be as good as 2020. Yeah, hit me up. Over. And the betting starts, June? Let's say media days. Over-under begins on SEC media days. And, BJ Lover says he's got 5 weird comments. And, yeah, I'm definitely taking the over on 3 myself because it was bad. He made some weird comments, but he made some very bad comments as well. Emperor of Rome, good to see you, man. Roll Tide. I'm happy to have you here. I know it's been a while. All of our regulars are here, and I know we'll have a lot of our regulars coming back whenever. You can come back and watch this live stream, whatever. Let's do it as a podcast even, I'm just sitting here talking. I mean, the setup's fantastic, but, you can put your phone down, listen to it in the car, listen to it while you work, whatever it might be. So, Emperor of Rome, DM, Mitch, John Sarian, Scott, Hunter, all of you regulars here, and everybody else is on the chat right now. All 25 of you, again, thank you so much for being here. Again, really, really appreciate it. Landon Atkins, thought on Texas A&M. They take a step back. Great year for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies. Still not to the point where they can beat Alabama. I know they get to host Alabama this year. They lose a lot. If I'm not mistaken, the offensive line should be relatively solid. Not as good as they were this last year. Mond is gone. So you've got a quarterback that you've got to go out and replace. A couple of key defensive starters you're going to have to go out and replace. I'm not saying A&M is going to fall off the face of the earth, but, for the Aggies to have signed Jimbo Fisher to a 10-year, $75 million contract, which was stupid, because if you don't pan out, guess what? You've got a big buyout you've got to give Fisher. Where do you draw your line? How long do you give Jimbo Fisher to beat Nick Saban in Alabama? Because that's what you've got to do if you want to win the West. If you want to win the SEC West, you've got to find a way to take down Alabama. They're coming to College Station. Can you do it? Probably not. Alabama's got this guy named Bryce Young. They don't rebuild, they reload. And only a handful of teams in the country can do that. Alabama is one of them. So, A&M, they might go 9-3. But is that acceptable in College Station? Many teams would kill for a record like that. I don't know if Aggie fans will. Eddie Rose, which coaches do I think are on the hot seat? I'll save that question for later, Eddie. Not to diss that. We're going to start to wrap things up here pretty soon, but not to go out that. But that's actually a video topic we're gonna address going forward. So here in a few weeks, we'll break that down. Coaches that are on the hot seat entering 2021. I would have said Harbaugh. He got an extension. Can't imagine they're going to get rid of him. So there's a handful out there that I think could be. And there's a handful that after this year could be on the hot seat going into 22. You've got a couple of coaches entering year 2, maybe year 3 of their tenure at a given school. And again, like as I think Comic Dude was saying earlier, some guys didn't get that COVID grace period. They got fired. They got the boot. Some guys you're just not seeing those effects yet. You got a coach that's in year 2, year 3 that didn't do as well as people thought they would because of COVID. I think they're going to take that into account. If I'm an athletic director, I go, yeah, you should have done better, but COVID, man, like home field advantage wasn't as great as it was. We were missing some key players. We couldn't travel. We didn't get to rack up those cupcake wins. Whatever it might be, they're going to get those grace periods later on. You just maybe aren't seeing them now. And the younger coaches, the guys that are earlier on in their careers, at their given schools, they're going to benefit more from that than from the guys that have been there a little bit longer. And that's what we saw from some of the firings. And let's see, catching up on the last few comments here. Let's see who else we have. Is Jeff Brom the most overrated head coach in college football right now, coming up from a Purdue student and fan? Mr. Pedro, that's a fantastic question. I don't know if he's the most overrated. I think you could very well make a case for Harbaugh being that. And I know I'm dogging on Harbaugh a lot, but I think if you lined up the coaches that are on the hot seat, Harbaugh wouldn't have a seat because it would already be burned to ashes. So Brom has to have a good year with Purdue this year. They were hit significantly with injuries and COVID, so I'm not giving him a bunch of hate. But that Ohio State victory from like 2 years ago, that's well in the rearview mirror. Great work. That was awesome. Monumental for Purdue football. You can't dwell on that, and you can't dwell on that for years. You've got to continue to build, and Purdue hasn't done that. So Brom is a guy that could very well be on the hot seat. If Purdue fails to make a bowl game this year, which for now needs to be the expectation in Lafayette, then yeah, I think he very well could be. B. Kelly, did that final game that Trask played going to hurt his stock? The Cotton Bowl for Kyle Trask hurt his stock. It did. He went out there and, like you said, threw 3 interceptions in 1 quarter. The game was over by the first quarter. Against Oklahoma, they murdered Florida, and that did hurt his stock. Yeah, he put up some solid numbers, fantastic numbers, but I mean, that's bad. And you can't necessarily judge a player on one game. People have bad games. But I think you look at how Trask played in the LSU game, how he played in the Oklahoma game, it didn't help his cause. Did not help his cause. Kurt Warner, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Phil Simms, also FCS quarterbacks. Emperor of Rome hitting us with the trivia per usual. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I know, went to Harvard. He's been just a journeyman in the NFL. And usually does very well at ruining other team seasons. Never been in the playoffs. Got to get that man in the playoffs. Nikki, 8 or 16 team playoff. I would prefer an 8 team right now. 16 is always better. Bigger is always better. But for now, there's no way they'll ever jump from 4 to 16. It's baby steps. Baby steps. I just want expansion. Get me 8. I'll be happy. All right. That's really all we need. Grayson, I appreciate you, man. Michigan State #1 fan. When will Michigan State's schedule come out? Probably in the next few weeks. The SEC just released theirs, so won't be too much longer. Comic Dude, when will they allow 100% capacity at stadiums again? I've got a feeling that's not going to be this year. The vaccines are coming out. People are getting them. But now we've got this new strand from South Africa that's made its way over to the United States. We've got a couple cases of that now. One that's supposed to be more contagious and worse than the COVID strand we've been dealing with for almost a year now. So if that gets out of hand, I don't know if we're ever going to pack people shoulder to shoulder like sardines in an 80,000 fan stadium. I just don't know if that's going to happen for a long time. I hope it does change soon, though. And wrapping up the stream, guys, again, we told you it lasts about an hour or so. I want to whip through. I'm talking whip through some of these last questions. Again, if you don't get to them today, save them. We're going to be back here next Monday. Promise you. Michael Hogg, good to see you, man. I hope you had a great new year. 2020 was great. Obviously not ideal for anybody, but it was good for us here at the Gridiron Expert. We're really looking forward to a better 2021. But I hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Super dude, Isaac's little bro. Alec, I appreciate it, man. I really do. I hope you guys are doing well up in Seattle. Tell Isaac I said hi. Tell your mom and dad I said hello. And hope you're doing good too, Alec. I really appreciate it, man. That's super sweet. Thank you, man. We're working on it. We're continuing to grow. Robert Sharpton, do I think Georgia's going 12-0 this season? I tell you what, Robert, if they can get past Clemson in the season opener, it looks very, very likely. If they get past Clemson in that season opener, very good chance Georgia runs the table and goes undefeated. I do think they can take down Florida this year. Hugh Freeze staying at Liberty. Sir Dobby, yes. Hugh Freeze will be staying at Liberty. And Liberty travels to Ole Miss this season. Remember, that's where Hugh Freeze used to coach. So that'll be a fun one. Miami making moves. We'll save that for a later time. RJ, certainly we'll talk more on the Canes and the U very soon. Re-Upload Central believes Oklahoma will win the title. We'll talk more about that, of course, in the future. Grayson, of course we I thought we did name you as a regular, and then he changed it to didn't. Yikes. No, of course you're a regular. I apologize. We've got so many of those, man. And running through the last few here at the bottom here. Grayson believing that Ohio State's cancellation saved Harbaugh's job. I would agree with that. Faye's Fate, what do I think about Nebraska? That's a coach that's on the hot seat Old Frosty, he's certainly on the hot seat. Scott Frost hasn't done anything in the last 3-4 years in Nebraska. And if he doesn't get to a bowl game this year, assuming we play a full 12-game schedule, how can you justify keeping him? How can you justify keeping Scott Frost? So Nebraska has the talent to get to the postseason this year, no doubt in my mind. But can Frost do it? I don't know. And that's a horrible answer. We'll dive deep into that later on. It's still early. It's only February. And then Jacob Myers, last question here. And Joseph Fusilier, over or under 8.5 wins for LSU this year. Initial reaction, under being 8. Initial reaction very well could change. Could be 9-3, 10-2. This is going to be a big bounce back year for LSU after a disappointing 2020. And Jacob Myers, Iowa State, potential playoff contenders this upcoming season. Absolutely. If you thought Iowa State was a fluke last year, if you thought that they didn't deserve the hype, you were wrong. Everybody wrote off Matt Campbell and the Cyclones after their loss to Louisiana on the opener. Then they rattled off so many straight victories. 6, 7 straight victories. Only other loss was to Oklahoma State by 3. Made the Big 12 title. Lost to Oklahoma in heartbreaking fashion. Battled back. Almost won it. Annihilated Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. They returned practically their entire team. Brock Purdy, the offensive line. Breece Hall, one of the best running backs in the country. Majority of their defense, yeah, they're playoff contenders. Absolutely. Unfortunately, they have to travel to Oklahoma. But let me tell you this. Iowa State might lose that game. They run the table the rest of the way. Maybe have a rematch against Oklahoma in the Big 12 title. Win that game, very similar to what Oklahoma did to them this last year. Losing in the regular season, winning in the title game, the one that matters the most. Iowa State, if they're a one-loss team or undefeated in the Big 12 championship game, obviously they're going to the playoff. Yeah, they're the real deal. And Matt Campbell seems to be sticking around in Ames. He's had opportunities to leave, and he hasn't. He likes what he's building in Ames. He believes in what he's building in Ames. They've got a 5-star culture in Ames. And yes, they are playoff contenders in 2021. So, guys, I want to thank you all so much for joining us here tonight. Robert, Sam, everybody else who maybe with questions we didn't get to, save them. Come back next Monday. We're actually going to be taking calls next Monday. And you can ask us in. We can have a little bit of a longer conversation. We can touch more on it. So, save those thoughts. We're going to get back to them. We're going to be talking college football year-round, every day of the week. Year-round, every day of the week, starting now. We said it was a new week, new day, new month. February 1st, live streams every Monday, 8 p.m. Central Time, and we've got more content coming out tomorrow. Coaching Change Series, Super Bowl predictions. You're not going to want to miss it. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I hope you all have a great night. I hope you all enjoyed the brand new setup. It's only going to get better from here. We're back to Gridiron Expert. Robert, what time? 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock Central Time. Every Monday. Put it on your calendar. Don't forget it. 8 o'clock Central Time. Right here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. We will be doing a college football live stream. I can promise you don't want to miss it. So, guys, Sam, Scott, Super Dude, everybody stay safe. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the content we've got for you coming out this week. And we will all see you next Monday. Have a great night, everybody.